Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough or continuing testing of Third Reich Events with Black Ice on the Hearts of Iron 3 engine, and we're going to continue this. And they're all telling me about memes here. Okay. We are currently producing too much ships, in my opinion. Not that these ships are bad, and that's one thing I need to look at because I'm reminded that unique ships might not have all the techs. Somebody wants to note that down for me to look at before the release version, and yes, I'm hearing the gardeners again. Okay, well, what do we want to build? We got a fair amount of practicals with air units going, so let's... And I was just talking to Brett yesterday, talking about efficiency and serial production of things, which sort of reminds me, I am not the most efficient builder. I'm a bit more haphazard in building in Hearts of Iron 3 and probably 4. Okay, let's see. We're going to do, obviously here, a armored division. Well, let's come down here. We want a division headquarters for sure. Let's do German trucks as okay, we'll do armored cars as well. We'll want what's the speed difference? Oh, artillery is much faster than medium artillery. Now trucks do modify the speed, but still the base speed is important. Okay, so we have reconnaissance. We want to do a mixed support. That's really fast. So mixed support does have some engineering. Yeah, let's do that. We'll get one of those into production. And just to be a little bit different, let's come back and sort of switch that up the opposite way. Motorized infantry with a light tank battalion. The difference is just the size of the unit. To be more effective for either one of these things would have been to combine a proper brigade, if you will, of armor and a proper brigade of infantry. But we are, to some degree, still playing the, ICs. But we're going to go down to motorcycle reconnaissance to be just sort of a cheaper. So these aren't great units by any means, but they are, well, they've turned out to be almost virtually the same, though the infantry-based one is slightly, just minusculely, 0.1 of a IC more. And, well, the difference is between October and September, so this will build a little quicker. No, this will build a little quicker. So the 101st Panzer Division will build slightly quicker as well, so it's a little cheaper and that kind of thing. So I sort of run around and do that kind of stuff. Okay, we'll get those into production. So once we get through that, We will do. I know it. Okay. Oh, I want to read this. Yes, the Nazi Party, I think, and I think maybe you're getting some of that from Glenn Beck. I think Glenn Beck overstates some of the influence that certain progressive elements within the U.S. had upon the Nazi Party, though I do believe they did have an influence. I'm not saying he is wrong in some of his assertions on assertions. Can't speak. Some of his assertions on the stuff, but I think he's overstating it at times. So yeah, and okay, his brother, the middle one, was a farmer but helped as flak personnel and firefighter. The youngest one was very pro-Nazi and wanted to be in the SS, and in 1948 he was accepted. He served the entire war in the 5th SS. And at the end, he fought in the relief attack on Budapest, right, where he was wounded. He was moved to Kiel for some reason where the British captured him, and he spent 4 years in Britain as a POW worker. Oh, very, very interesting. And yes, trust me, I understand how people got caught up in the Nazi movement, and whether they continue to be Nazis after the war, I don't know, but and some very much did. Um, but I could especially young one can see that and can see that how vibrant the movement was and wanting to be part of the new thing. Okay, what is a good fort busting build without breaking historical units? Well, I think to a point, which isn't necessarily breaking historical units totally fort busting. Is simply to have the railway artillery and attach them to a infantry division for the time being of an assault on a fort, and then immediately removing it. I don't have a good one in my head right now. I may talk about it in my unit stuff, my unit tutorials. May not. I don't remember. But that is part of, because Germany definitely was doing fortress busting stuff, and I talk about it in Third Reich Events. And George, one of the Czechoslovakian, or Czech, I should say now, Czech contributors to Third Reich Events, very much has helped with some of that, including the Germans examining the Czech fortification, and examining also as in let's setting up artillery pieces and anti-tank guns at different ranges and blasting at the fortifications afterwards, just as testing them. So examining wasn't just like walking around with a flashlight and looking at what they look like, but was testing them out, knowing that the Czech forts were heavily influenced to the point maybe having some of the French engineers who were responsible for elements of the Maginot Line come over and help the Czechs build their fortifications. So they knew that by figuring out what was going on with the Czech forts, they had a much better idea of what's going on with the Maginot Line and how thick the bunkers walls were. And so the Germans were definitely doing some of that. And those of you who play War Thunder a lot, some of you with me and some of the stuff, the Dicker Max and the Emil sort of tank destroyers. Well, those were, because they're sort of bigger cannon pieces, those, my understanding, were actually sort of originally in the design works as sort of heavy anti-fortress guns. They're not like the Stug, which was also sort of that kind of thing, but not specific for the Maginot Line. Not necessarily like with big heavy frontal armor to come up and take the fire from the forts, but more of a long range sniping, somewhat maybe indirect fire onto the bunkers, but without quite being a self-propelled artillery piece lobbing up and over, but sort of frontally smashing, but like maybe staying by. Oh, okay, Tippett. Good night. Thanks for being here. We always enjoy your hanging out. The Boy Scouts of Germany's Youth. Yes, James Watson saying. I had a good friend many years ago. I long since lost touch with him. But he was a boy in the Hitler Youth and was still, I'm guessing now, like age 8 to 10 years old or something like that, when the British came and occupied Hanover. That's where he was from, in Hanover. But so, he was a young boy in the Hitler Youth, and he very much wasn't a Nazi by the time, he emigrated at some point in his life, forget when, but spent more than half of his life in the U.S. Very much not a Nazi, but so I've talked to some of those, and it's not exactly what the Boy Scouts were, but in a way. And I know there's a movie that looks sort of like a comedy. I've not wanted to watch it, talking about a mother and her sons in the Hitler Youth or something. Doesn't seem like something maybe a very good idea. Yeah, and that min-max thing is sort of what one of my problems I have with the Black Ice mod is that they're doing too much of that, and that's partially influenced by one of the best min-maxers, Oh My God. And I like Oh My God. He's a good guy. OMG, or however you want to, he spells it out a bit more, but Oh My God in it. And he's a good modder, and I don't want to knock all that, but I disagree with some of the fundamentals on it. But one of the problems is he is one of the best min-max players out there, at least that I've ever seen in a video form, because he has a really good, just done one YouTube series of it. But if you want to watch some of that, it's good. And it's out of date, but it's probably still relatively good tutorial on it. Is that he sort of kind of, I think, builds Black Ice now to be a challenge for him, especially on the, Gofraz, or however you pronounce it, the super hard level. And he can defeat things very quickly in that level. So, that's not what I'm looking for in a mod for Hearts of Iron. Is simply that all three of my remains prone until their deaths. The youngest died in 2000, was buried with a Nazi party pin on his chest. Well, disappointed to hear that. Good luck, IKB. Be safe. Take all the precautions. Wear gloves. Wear face masks. Wash up. Don't touch your face. All that kind of good stuff. Yeah, and what I normally do is go into the defines, EULA defines file, or Hearts of Iron, or for Black Ice, and just manually, for my playthrough, reduce the effectiveness levels of fortifications. And it's universal, so it isn't giving Germany advantage, meaning it reduces Germany's forts by an equal amount. So instead of necessarily like reducing the fortress levels of the Maginot Line in particular, or Gibraltar, or Moscow, or whatever, I'm reducing overall fortress effectiveness by not less than what it was, because I do go and look at it in vanilla levels, but they're not as much as Black Ice. They're sort of somewhere in between vanilla and Black Ice when I normally make my playthroughs. So I sort of balance that out a little bit. I don't like that. Yeah, people continued their Nazi views. I mean, I don't hardly know what to say without insulting your relatives, but I think when you look at just the evilness of the Nazis, it's just so many levels. That wasn't apparent in their propaganda. A lot of it wasn't. And they tried to hide a lot of it. And so, yeah, I, Yeah, people are free to think what they want, but when you're presented with such evil, such apparent evil, I'll talk about more of all of that when I do the series again, because I've learned more than I knew when I did my last German series. Well, the commies are worse, but that doesn't excuse the Nazis. Yeah, I could either make a quick tutorial video on how to do it or post the file up. It's just real. It's just you just take in a text editor and go in and change just a few number values. It's very easy. So even if you're playing multiplayer or something, you're reducing it for everybody equally. So it makes this because I did that for my last, and you can go and look at it, and I'm sure it's episodes talk about like the siege of Moscow and whatnot. It's still a hell of a fight, but it's not some super hell, some super min max. I mean, it's still I'm still attacking it with like I don't know. You have to go and look to really get the numbers, but like 10 or more divisions, and a few of them that I had SR'd in some railway artillery to, and sort of min-maxed and removed the transportation brigade from some of the units because transportation brigades don't, if you're just sitting in this province, attacking this province, don't help you, but left the transportation brigades there to then reassemble the divisions back to sort of more historically based decisions after the siege of Moscow. And for some of that, because they definitely brought up big railway siege type guns for saying things like the siege of Sevastopol. So just because of the way the game mechanics to have that siege gun not part of a regular infantry division makes it less effective. And since there's a brigade number limitations, yeah, it's perfectly reasonable to create a temporary and I'm saying historical just within the limitations of the game mechanics of creating a temporary min-max fortress busting division. That I'm not objecting to for special cases, a Sevastopol. And Moscow, they were definitely doing some fortifications around it. Big super tank ditches, I mean, as in like big super ditches. You can look, it's been years since I've looked at some of the film footage, but that you could pile deep enough to pile multiple tanks deep, try to get across it or whatever. But I don't know how effective that would have all been with the Germans showing up with some engineers getting through some of it. Meaning, I don't know how much of it was for the morale of the Moscow people that they're all out there with shovels digging these big anti-tank ditches and hooray, we're going to defend our city, and not being scared, oh, the Germans are coming and hiding in their homes and maybe trying to flee, trying to keep morale up. So I don't know how much of the building was just morale building versus actual effective defense building. But and then the Kremlin itself and the city itself definitely has a fortification value. So I am saying that there was actual fortifications around it. And some of these fortification levels are definitely justified. Some of them. I think they overdo it. And so either or both, reducing some of the absolute values and or reducing the relative value of the forts, in my opinion, is entirely justified. I don't know. You have Corregidor Island, which is not all of the Mindanao Peninsula here, but I wouldn't necessarily do Manila as level 10, but that maybe Gibraltar is getting to a level 10, maybe. I would say most of the Maginot line should not be anything beyond a 7. There might be one or two provinces that might go up beyond that. So 10 should be very, very rare, but they're not. So there's some of that going on here. Okay. So two uncles from the Second World War, they never met. Oh, what? Coming through a lot of countries two thoughts aren't known to the people. Yeah. Yeah, the loser is the hated thief and the winner is the king. That's true. I'm not going to say what you want about my relatives, but I'm not part of. I'm proud of all who served, but whatever they may be. But I cannot say that my views would be different if I lived in Germany. Yeah, and let's see, this is fighter bomber prototypes, and I don't know how much we should talk about all this. I'm not blaming people. I'm not saying it's good, but I'm not blaming people who in their experience, people get sold lies, shall we say. And one of the lies that Hitler tried to tell people is that he would go to a church, whether it's Catholic or Protestant, and make noises as saying he supports Christianity. He was an anti-Christian, though. He would tell lies. So, and anybody in the SS would know of the very anti-Christian feelings that the Nazis put out there. There is no proper SS men. There are people that were sort of give honorary SS things that might very well be Christians, but proper SS men were anti-Christian. And not that you can't be anti-Christian, obviously, but it's sort of the lies I'm talking about, the lies that Hitler told. So people believing the lies, I understand, because they have no necessarily evidence at the time different, but sort of post it, and afterwards, after they saw the terribleness of the Nazis, that's where I start to twin engine armament. Okay, start to really have problems. Doesn't mean I like the Nazis. Is it grayed out? What are we looking at? Twin engine. Oh, it's this one. Okay. Yeah, 1938. We'll stop that. Not that I'm don't have problems with Nazis at the time, but I just understand better, shall we say, that people are buying into the lies at the time. So I'm against those people and against that stuff, but I don't have necessarily great hatred for them. Well, we just, and I sort of glossed over it with burning concern that the Pope gave talking about the Nazis and how the Pope was anti-Nazi. So I don't think he had the Pope on a rope, if I'm getting your sort of joke, but meaning single engine armament research. Mit burning sunder, or whatever, however you pronounce that, with burning concern. And a very, very good book that I would highly recommend on the sort of subject is oh boy, gonna have it. It's not Hitler. It's Hitler's Compromises. That's the book. Hitler's Compromises talks about in detail, as much detail as they can sort of get into, is Hitler and the Nazis dealing with the Protestants and the Catholics parts of Germany, but heavily dealing with the Catholic part of Germany, and how they were having conflicts with the Catholics down there. Yeah, and we often talk about positives that the Nazis did, like building the the Autobahn, but they also got rid of most of the slums in Germany. But then again, if you had birth defects or you were becoming a burden on the state, they would kill you and put you in a crematorium. And there, again, from Hitler's Compromises, there accounts of somebody like living in a small town who was disabled and was going to be taken away, and going around to his neighbors saying goodbye to them, and they were saying goodbye to him, and basically knowing he was going off to be killed in a hospital, environment. And so they were, would take away the useless eaters and kill them. So and these aren't what the Germans would call subhuman beings of either Jews or Slavs or whatever. No, these are Germans. And so they're some really, really dark things that were going on that, so any of the good, getting rid of the slums, building the Autobahn, doing a lot of modernization for Germany, doesn't balance out all of the straight up evil that was going on at the time. And so, it's whenever I might talk about, somebody can definitely pull out of context something, oh yeah, building the Autobahn, sweet. Gamer says Hitler was all right or justified because they did some good. No, doing a little bit of good and then lots and lots of evil doesn't justify the evil. It's just recognizing that there were positives. Yes, it wasn't everything bad. You can't have TDS for Nazi Germany. You need to understand when it was good, when it was doing something positive, but that doesn't mean that it's good justified as bad. Though Trump is not evil, though I did use the TDS thing as a comparison, just that these people. Trump talks about a medicine that might cure coronavirus. Whoa, must be bad. Trump talks about bad medicine. Somebody dies from the medicine. Well, yeah, if you overdose on the medicine, and they've known for years, specifically, and not just the fish tank cleaner that some woman gave her husband and maybe herself, but they've known for years that either long-term exposure to that medicine or very high doses of that medicine will give you medical problems. They know that is a known thing already, and like I say, known that for years, and doesn't automatically cure everything in all cases either. They know in the coronavirus, they know that, but no, the news media is just wanting to slam Trump because Trump. Artillery carriage designs. Okay, good. Now, does that open up? That's a 38 technology. Well, we'll do that soon. Let's look down here at operational. Okay. Lots of 37s. We're doing special foreign unit combined arms. We'll do mountain unit training first. And we have, okay, more fighters that we're able to do. Very good. Okay. And yes, we're going to put all these ships below the fighters, but I don't want the fighters above the other production, particularly the factory production. Okay, how are we doing? 87, 157. Okay, well, we've got lots of steel coming in. We might even actually need to do some of that. Yeah, that's also what James is saying about all that the Nazis did was wiped out. Well, not literally, because a lot of the Autobahns survived, and some I think are maybe even still around today. in a not terribly altered form. I don't know, but I think many of them are more modernized, widened, whatnot. But the even if, again, I'm not saying it's good, but even if you believe the racial theories and the religious theories of Nazism, you believe that you believe in them, and I would say the racial theories are heavily debunked with modern genetics. Now, you could still be a racist with modern genetics, but the theories that the Nazis promoted are have, I think, science has proved that they're bunked. Now, of course, a proper Nazi would say that's all Jewish science because it's not Nazi science, so it's all Jewish science. So I guess you're probably hearing the leaf blower or whatever the hell's outside. Sorry about that. Yep, it's a leaf blower. So the racial theories, I would say, are debunked with they would call it, because it's what I've read, they would call it Jewish science as a way to discredit it, whether it was actually done by Jews or not. But it's, I think any modern geneticist would debunk the Nazi theories, but you can still have modern genetic-based racism. But even if you believed all of that, even if just the ineffectiveness of Hitler and the Nazis would show it up to be bad to support that. What is the dude gaming saying? Saying that they built some stuff is just so it's okay that they slaughtered Jews and non-Jews alike for living as baby. Yes, absolutely, and I don't want anybody to take anything I'm saying positive in any way balances out all the evil that they're doing. He is funny and weird, just like George W. He was all these people speaking troubles and had gestures just like W, but he's your leader, not mine, so yeah. No, it's not a minigun. Definitely not a minigun. And, well, fortunately, no one's shooting a minigun outside my window. Little miniguns are cool. Well, one thing I will say, a lot of the foreign media distorts Trump because a lot of the American media distorts Trump. So I don't blame other people from having a distorted view of Trump because, again, they're listening to the lies. And we don't want us to keep doing mountain training. Okay, well, why did that? Oh, no, it's just red. Okay, it's not blocked. It's just we're not in that. What did we just get? Oh, bomb development. 1000K bomb development. Okay, we've lost high that's it. We've lost high popularity, so we're down on medium, so we don't have some of the benefits of high popularity. So that's why that went to the red. Okay, that makes sense. Well, we're not getting our rightful amounts of research. So let's see if we can interest let's see if we can interest the Soviet Union. They got lots of money, and because we'll need to over into buying supplies. And Germany definitely sold things that could be equated to supplies to the Soviet Union at this time, and definitely even more so after the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Yeah, I've seen video of them firing at night. I've only seen, I think, one firing at a time, live and in person, and it was not at night. Okay, build air bases, yes. And before IKB says, I'm remembering to come down. Mostly remembering because he said last time, though I know he's on a grocery run right now. Move them to the top. I always worry about what I say because either somebody new to the channel and the videos won't hear what I've all said before, or somebody else will repost or something, take it out of context, what I say because of things. Well, I think Trump is doing a very good job. I don't agree with everything he does, and I definitely don't agree with everything he says. This is what some people have got to get over. Trump said something. A lot of times Trump is just saying, unlike other world leaders, he just says what pops in his mind. Oh, we should do this. And then people talk to him and go, no, that would be a bad idea, banning those guns. Oh, because of this. Oh, yeah, we need better background checks. And well, better. Yeah, we need better. You mean better? Oh, no. And then he'll come off of it because he realizes that what some people saying is better about gun background checks doesn't really make it better, just makes it stupid harder or something, and not just more effective. So don't pay attention to what Trump says. Pay attention to what Trump and or the government actually does. So whether he tweets something, and especially if he retweets something else, he just sees their one tweet and may not get a whole bunch of other context around it. Oh, he's retweeted a racist. Well, he may have not known because it's just something that appeared up in his, or somebody tweeted at him or something, and he didn't know the rest of the context. So, and then the news media runs around it. Yeah, he just retweeted a damn thing. How many things have you looked at and saw and then realized later maybe, oh, well, this is some lunatic was saying it. And you didn't realize that it was a lunatic that said something reasonable once. Because even lunatics get things right once in a while. So, yeah, you have to sort of, yeah, oh, well, yeah, but see, Trudeau, here's the difference I would say with Trudeau. I do sort of follow it from a distance, and Trump. A lot of Trump's stupid stuff is either Trump being Trump the salesman. This is either whether it's about himself or about America. This is the greatest thing that America ever seen, and it's observably not. He's just trying to sell it hard. Now, it's maybe a good thing, but it's not better than, I don't know, something that maybe Kennedy did or whatever did in the past. And Trump isn't even looking that way. He's just putting superlatives. This is the greatest. This is the best. My followers are the most. Or, he's just being a over-the-top salesman about things. Some often dealing with himself as a person, but can also be in just generally America or what he sees things as positive. And you can even look at when Trump is in the past, like people that were on The Apprentice or whatever, talks really highly of them in cases and things. So he's just, trying to be a cheerleader, as it were. So some of the stuff is he's just being a cheerleader. So he oversays it. My crowds are the biggest crowds. And we go and look, yeah, no, observably they're not. But, he's pushing his viewpoint. And so I'm good with that. Just you got to understand that. And then two, he's saying a lot of stuff off the top of his head without thinking about it. Okay, at a press conference, in an interview, or just tweeting, it's just sort of like an open stream of consciousness. Like I'm thinking about this. This could be good. And then people talk to him. Yeah, building a bridge over that river isn't really good because X, Y, and Z. Oh, okay, yeah. Having the connection would be good, but there's a bunch of other reasons why it would be bad. Oh, okay. Now he understands this one particular issue. So these people that get all excited. Okay, now the difference with Trudeau is that it's highly ideologically based, and he's thought about the stuff. So Trump's just thinking off the top of his head about things. And even if he were just to sit quietly in a room and think about it for 20 minutes alone, he would realize it's a bad idea. But it just popped, because we all have these ideas that pop into our head. And so Trump just, unlike most presidents, and probably presidents shouldn't do this, is just, give notion to ideas, without clearly thinking about them. But Trudeau thinks about them and also has their ideological base. So it doesn't matter if they're a good idea in reality or not. He doesn't care. He's just looking at promoting it. So, yeah, that's sort of the difference between the two. Now, of course, also, I dislike Trudeau's ideology, but I could say that there are shall we say, libertarians or conservatives that have, in America or other places, have ideological strong points that they don't want to give up even in face of reality. Though I may generally be on their side in the ideology, just they don't want to be flexible about things. We don't get that in our news. We only have news on our news. Trump is only on our news when it's something big, something's going on. When he canceled the WHO, when he wanted to buy Greenland. Well, buy Greenland was just sort of like, hey, maybe we should buy that place. That wouldn't be bad idea. Thought, it was just off the top of his head. And then people run around about it, and that's a very interesting case, because that was really, if you look at the context, it was just off the top of his head. But I don't know if they covered this in your news or in the general news media. I think it was President Truman or President Eisenhower. I can't swear to you which one it was, but either it was President Truman or President Eisenhower. I think it was Truman, a Democrat. Eisenhower was Republican. Obviously, General Eisenhower from World War II. You have returned, and I hope safely. Very good. And Brett's here. Good. Proposed and actually asked the Danish government if they would sell them Greenland. And this was at the time before the jet age really sort of took off. This was after World War II, but before the jet age took off, and they really were thinking of Greenland as a sort of a international airbase kind of thing for, transatlantic flights. And so there was I think it was Truman, but it was either Truman or Eisenhower, that proposed to the Danish government to buy that. So this wasn't like, again, I'll say it was Trump just talking off the top of his head about it, but it wasn't like some crazy idea that only he had. It was something that our other serious presidents had in the past. Every human being makes mistakes. Trump is different. He has a bigger audience, yes, and he doesn't think about it. Hello, Brett. Trump also knows how to entice them. He's as we would call it in the modern sense, trolling. He is trolling the media, very much so. He is a big troll. That is part of his personality when he's going after somebody. Yeah, I understand about your internet, Brett. So, well, that a previous U.S. president thought or tried to buy Greenland, and Trump was talking, just basically saying, hey, it'd be nice to maybe buy that piece of land that belongs to Denmark, because Greenland isn't a country like Iceland is. And it would sort of be kind of smart for America to buy Greenland. It'd also be sort of kind of smart for Canada to buy Greenland. And I don't know what, if anything, that Denmark gets out of having as a strategical or economic resource. Denmark gets from Greenland. There's more green coming to Greenland with global warming, but we won't go into that right now. But what does it get out of it? Now, the Dutch owning Curacao and the other, I forget the other little island down here. They don't get a whole lot of it, but it is a tourist destination, so I presume it's probably a profitable colony. And probably a relatively nice place to live, though I hear it's very corrupt. Sort of a corrupt colony, in my understanding. So I sort of understand it from that sense of why the Dutch maintained that. And it really isn't, in my opinion, a viable country. Probably be swallowed up by Venezuela or something if it wasn't protected, and it probably doesn't have too much of a budget to really do. When I say it's probably a profitable colony, it probably is. But if you're doing big infrastructure projects, either it's going to take many years to repay it, or somebody like the Dutch or the Americans would have to pay for it. And fishing and mineral rights, yeah, I could see that. That's sort of maybe why America or Canada, because it's sort of obviously strategically located. But what it would do is complement the U.S. and or Alaska, but U.S. particularly, with part of the sort of polar strategic um, war, or war would be overstating it, conflict with Russia over what's going on up in the polar regions. And it would probably be better for the world as a whole, probably. Obviously, we don't know what the future holds, but that it was a little bit more strongly held by somebody like the U.S. Because Canada, quite honestly, can't hold anything strongly. I don't even know how much the Canadians would notice if we took over their country. Quite honestly, I don't know how much. I mean, obviously, it would make the news and everything, but if we sort of turned all their provinces into states, quite honestly, don't know how much it would change for them. With our federal system, they would still get to. I know we have a few Canadians here, but I really don't know how much they would notice if we just sort of accidentally took over Canada. Now they would notice if Russia takes over Canada, not necessarily some of the islands or northern polar positions, but having Greenland as a strategic situation clearly and firmly in the U.S. camp, I think would be a good thing, and not just. But as you point out very smartly, is fishing and mineral rights is a thing. Lots of methane gas, okay. Technically, it's not even Dutch anymore. More of an autonomous region with its own government, but it's still some Dutch control. Yeah, that would probably be why it's so corrupt, is because it's somewhat autonomous. Ice is on fire. Trust me, you can light it with a match. Okay, didn't know that about that being up there, the methane gas. You are already Jewish. You don't know it yet. Yeah, well. So, yeah, it's just because we are such similar countries between Canada and the U.S. I understand there's differences. I understand the reason that Canada exists now is simply the Americans that won treated the losers very badly. Not as terribly as some cases, but really did force out the loyalists. Didn't allow them to adjust to staying in a independent U.S. And so the basic founders of Canada were Americans, but we're not, the U.S. Americans. So we're Canadians. We're those people, but we're not them. Sort of defining themselves by a negative, by we're not that, as opposed to what they really defining themselves as a positive. Is going to the same way with Suriname. Oh, it's going the same way as with Suriname. But I thought Suriname was entirely independent. Because I've sort of known some people that carried guns around Suriname for a while, I think occasionally shooting at people. Down there. Does the U.S. Constitution insist that all states have to be republics? Or our constitution? No, they would have to be a republic. We don't have in America any inheritable titles. They all have to. They can all have their own form of governments. Only one state has a unicameral house, meaning not all the other states have a lower and upper house. So much of what our government was based upon Britain in the late 18th centuries without the titles. So they didn't have the inheritance of like the House of Lords. The idea was to sort of have a House of Lords, but have it individual merit, meaning somebody for some reason, normally success in life, but what type of that? Could be military, could be economic, could be whatever, would eventually become a senator, and and have to get reelected, so have to perform well. Often and start reelected by the legislature of that state and not necessarily popular vote, but would have would have to be elected so you could get rid of and you wouldn't have to get rid of him because he's corrupt or broken the law. You just go, we don't like what he's doing, we're voting in somebody new. So it was to try to sort of be a republic version, if you will, of Britain in the 18th century, seeing the flaws, and there are flaws with a republic, trust me, but there's also flaws with an inherited system, and so they were trying to get rid of the worst of the inherited with having the fewest problems of a democracy. So they were sort of the republic that was sort of, and knowing that, if George Washington had a son, he would obviously be in line to run for president and probably be elected for president if he wanted to, but he would still have to do it on his own merits and couldn't be just a babbling idiot or couldn't demand to do stuff that the Americans didn't want to do. So yeah, there is, trying to mitigate that. But so we don't specify what the exact state governments have to look like. But I do believe when you become a state, I don't know, when you're admitted to the states, they may have to prove, or when they're admitted as a state, it may be under a certain understanding of what the current government was. Yeah, that's something I have to look into a little bit more. And then Curacao, when it goes fully independent, like what they want, it will go the same way as Suriname. Well, Suriname is god awful, and at least for a while has been communist. We don't know if it still is. Got rid of the royals, the French, they saved your butt. Okay, aero engine research has advanced very nicely, and I believe it's grayed out, but we'll check. Yes, good. Okay, we're coming down into escorts. Here, looking at 36 and 37 technologies that have become available. Yeah, Bassman and Sons. Yes, yes, yes. I just love that advertising. There's the sort of the insight of what it fully was, but just like, what does they say? This is truly the text here is my commentary. Now that you've joined the SS, you need a spiffy uniform to have people properly fear you. Without that, why join the SS? Assman and Sons, Schoens, but yeah, Sons, can supply many of your uniform needs. Just the SS guy looking at his Death Skull cap, smiling. That was just, that advertisement just got me. Yeah, commentary down here. This is Suriname. What is it, Guyana, or the former British, and this is, of course, Guinea. Guinea-Bissau is over here. Oh, what's these sort of called? Whatever. The French are still part of metropolitan France, which has done the best. Colonialism works. Getting rid of colonialism doesn't necessarily improve your lives. I don't know if people really understood that yet. Now, I understand that political leaders want to get power for themselves, so they tell people things. But Guinea, yeah, okay, Guinea. Yeah, so there's Guinea here, Suriname, and French Guinea. Yeah, a lot of these places aren't doing as well as, say, the Bahamas, which are still part of, are more of a commonwealth, I believe, than some of the others, and definitely like Bermuda and whatnot are, where Jamaica's independent. Yeah, things haven't gone so well for some of these minor nations. That, yeah, they've been more or less protected from, say, Cuba doing a direct invasion or something like that by the U.S., though, of course, Cuba has been messing with local politics around and definitely sort of got the local politics to approve, which is Grenada is maybe too small. It didn't quite even make the map. Down here, that they sort of did a coup and then brought in the Cubans. Cubans. And so, yeah, we the U.S. and maybe to a lesser extent someplace like Britain, but have protected them from outright conquest by some of these people. And they would have been outright conquest if the U.S. hadn't protected them. Hey, was it the Russians or that had death heads first? Okay. Death heads that you see in the Nazis, in the Panzers, which is a different skull. If you look at it, it's a different skull. You see on the black Panzer uniforms a different skull on their collars. That goes back to the old Hussar, but that goes back to the Napoleonic Wars primarily. One of the princely states, maybe Hessian. Oh man, before I get into these lectures, I should have notes. But was there that basically when Napoleon is reorganizing Europe, the prince takes his army, and it's a prince as in it's a principality, so the leader takes his army and basically marches and fights its way to the coast, and then gets picked up by the British Navy and hauled off, basically all of his army. Now, it's not a huge army, it's a few regiments strong. And if I'm not mistaken, was it there or maybe later in the peninsula, but I think it was on the fight out, he gets killed. And so one of the cavalry regiments that's associated with him, after he's killed, starts wearing all black as a uniform, as a European. In Asia, it's generally white is the mourning colors, where mourning for death is black. So they wear all black in mourning for their lost leader. And that comes about during the Napoleonic Wars. And they continue fighting, and they continue getting either recruits from home or just other Germans that are deserting from the Napoleonic armies that are German units, and keep fighting throughout the Napoleonic era. And although the one leader dies, doesn't mean that there aren't heirs to the principality. So that sort of black and the death heads primarily go to that in the German use. I'm not saying that you can't find examples earlier. There probably are. But that is sort of primarily look to the Napoleonic. And I think it's also around the Napoleonic, and I don't know when it was first done or who it is, but it's either the 17th or the 21st Lancers. I believe they're Lancers. But the 17th or 21st Cavalry unit, whether they're Lancers or not, but they become the Lancers. And the reason I know it's the 17th or the 21st is because they're omegated or put together, so it's 17th/21st. Uses a skull and crossbones with a fabric drapery below it, or whatever you want to call it. I forget the exact heraldic this says, or glory. So it's death or glory. So it's the skull and crossbones, and it's death or glory for themselves as their cap badge. And it's still, and I think the unit is no longer existing, but was definitely still around in World War II. So the British were using a death head unit badge, but it definitely had the or glory below it. So it means, we're riding to glory or death. So we're either going to be glorious or we're going to die. So that is the death's head as I understand and know it. Okay. But anyway, that's what's everyone's favorite tank? Well, the Panzer IV is a very good one, or an overall Tiger II. That's sort of at the end there. And that is my understanding of histories of Death's Head. Again, you can go back to the pirates type use, which obviously predates the Skull and Crossbones, but it wasn't quite as blatant as Skull and Crossbones at start. I have looked into the pirates too, but they definitely did use it. And there's probably earlier things too, but the main, those are in the sort of modern military usage. Those are the two that I know of. Okay, the NSFK, which is the National Socialist Flieger Corps, founded in 1937. And this is also, to some degree, a breaking away from the SA, but setting this up as a paramilitary air enthusiast organization that will continue to the end of the National Socialist regime. I'm looking at the metal. That's not unreasonable. Now, of course, we're doing really well with metal now, but I'm still looking at not wanting to overdo the metal, but lots of supplies. And we'll talk about organizing the Reich research later on, but get you a 1% bonus to the research. So you can look up some of that on Wikipedia to get some of the details. It's fascinating. I've been reading, or have in the past, and I'm sort of in the middle of reading the history of the Peninsula Wars. During the Napoleonic Wars, the British fighting Napoleon and whatnot down there. Okay, air-launched torpedoes have advanced. Very good. 700 bombs, yes, and we'll stop that because it's 39. We're still going through escorts, looking for 34. Let's do that. Okay, well, we're going to keep the live stream going, but we're going to end this episode for YouTube. So again, I want to thank everyone for watching. Thanks for liking the videos, and I'd love to hear your comments on things. See you next time for more Hearts.